unlike other vibe coding tutorials, I'm going to show you how to go from an idea to a deployed application end to end in this tutorial. And we're going to pull in some external data. We're going to build with some fun frameworks and create a really interactive map visualization. So this is going to be more fun than those other tutorials out there. And by the end of this video, you're going to know everything you need to know to get started building on Replit. So let's actually just dig in. When I get started building, I like to start by kind of thinking about the problem that I'm trying to solve. And this really helps me. This is really useful for folks that are new to vibe coding. If you struggle with like conceptualizing what you're trying to build, or sometimes you find yourself like in front of a prompt box and you're like, I don't even know what to say. This can be really useful. If you don't think that way, maybe you should just start building. Sometimes I do that too. But usually when I'm planning things out, I like to get a visual of what I want to build. So what I'm having in mind is I live in San Francisco. I want a map of all the cool spots, the cool parks in San Francisco. And I want to be able to kind of move around that map and see interesting locations, maybe apply some filters, maybe some other stuff. So the problem, right, for framing the problem is that I want an interactive map of San Francisco's parks and public spaces, which is what we want is an interactive tool that allows me to check a map of San Francisco, see public spaces and parks, discover new places. The things I need to know how to do, I need to know how to prompt, process, and analyze external data because, we have to get that data, that park data from somewhere, how to debug, how to handle errors and edge cases. Now, this is the crux of vibe coding, creating the first prompt. And we're going to walk through, there's some like actually kind of gotchas here or things that jump out. Help me create a minimalist maps app to visualize San Francisco's parks. That's great. You should use Leaflet for map visualization and fetch data from OpenStreetMap. Boom. Okay, so right off the bat, you're saying, okay, this isn't fair. You knew what Leaflet was. You knew what OpenStreetMap is. Vibe coding, doing this stuff, 90% of it is knowing what you don't know, knowing frameworks that you can apply to certain problems, knowing words that produce really good outputs. So in the next video you'll see, I'll talk about 5 key skills in vibe coding. Don't worry about that for now, but I'm going to call out when I use these types of things, and you're going to see how I do research to integrate that into the apps that I build. So Leaflet. I know Leaflet's a really good JavaScript framework for making maps. As a matter of fact, this sample over here came from Leaflet. OpenStreetMap is a great open source data platform for maps data, and it has parks. It has these formations. So you might say, hey, what type of data will we include in this application? Well, I did a quick Google search. I said, how can I visualize what types of data OpenStreetMap has? And I found this OpenStreet browser. So this is like a very busy map. But I was like poking around here and I was like, okay, I can get parks for free. There's Golden Gate Park. What else can I get for free from OpenStreetMap? Picnic tables. I don't really care about picnic tables. But I think if we go in here, like places, natural formations. Okay, so we got wood, and there are images, right? Like, so if I look at this, this is all free data. This is pulling from Wikipedia, so maybe OpenStreetMap has this data somewhere. We have access to woods, right? And so what I did was I kind of like went through here and I looked at all the stuff and I was like, what would be cool stuff that I want in my map? And so now I identified this domain specific knowledge. And this is really important, right? I said, hey, we want to use this framework. We want to use Leaflet because I know that produces a good outcome. I want to use OpenStreetMap because I know there's free data there. And now I know, based on OpenStreetMap, that they have these natural formations and these leisure sort of locations as well. This is domain-specific knowledge. What does that mean? Well, the power of AI is actually in product. Specifically, product-specific knowledge, domain-specific knowledge. The models, all these models that are coming out today, yesterday, next week, that's too much. They're really powerful. But the thing is, nobody knows what to use them for. And so everyone's trying to figure out, how do I use this thing to be more productive or create something cool? And what we see is actually the people that are the most productive or create the coolest stuff are, 1, creative, and 2, have some specific knowledge of a thing that other people don't have. I know a lot about parks. I know a lot about, maps, apparently. Like, I knew these things. I was able to do research to get to these things. And so now I have the domain-specific knowledge to go out and build this app with some clues for AI to integrate. And I have a pretty good feeling that this is going to work well because OpenStreetMap has been around for a very long time. So now what I'm going to say is, like, I'm just going to drop this in here. Help me create a minimalist maps application to visualize San Francisco's parks. you should use Leaflet for map visualization and fetch data from OpenStreetMap. And then we're going to say, include the following OpenStreetMap data types for San Francisco. So we're going to say natural formations, woods, beaches, islet. I've literally never seen that word before. Cave entrance. Apparently there are caves in San Francisco. And then we'll say leisure park and gardens. One other thing I like to do here is what we can do is come over here. I actually have this nice little mock-up. We're going to take a screenshot of that. I'll copy that guy. And then pretty cool, can attach that. Say I've attached a mock-up. We're going to start building. So what we've seen at Replit, product managers, product designers, people that just like want to get an MVP done or like visualize their ideas, we're going to go from something that I sketched out, this rough idea that I sketched out, did some research on, to something that works. That's the goal today. That's what vibe coding is, right? It's not about writing the code. It's about that product specific knowledge, and it's about the domain knowledge and applying logic to these problems. So the first thing Agent does, if you haven't used Agent before, is it's going to come up with a plan for our application. And that plan just kind of confirms what Agent's going to work on and make sure it's like on the right track. Once we approve that plan, Agent's going to start with a visual preview. And then after the visual preview is through, it's actually going to start building out our app. So I'll help you create a minimalist maps app using Leaflet, OpenStreetMap data. We have some follow-up stuff here. I'm just going to prove that with the most basic version and start. And now what's happening, right? Agent's configuring our entire development environment. So if you've never used Replit before, if you've never heard about Replit before, you go to replit.com, and I didn't install anything. I didn't configure any languages or packages or environments. This is in my browser. But Agent set up the entire environment. So it kind of is mimicking what a developer would do, what a junior developer would do. And then our very first step here is that Agent's going to stream in a visual preview of my app. And notice how the layout looks kind of like the mockup I drew, which is pretty cool. And it's going to give us kind of the same data types that I provided it from OpenStreetMap, which is pretty cool. Maybe next steps, if we get this, is going to be to implement some like advanced filtering or those Wikipedia images we saw, because I thought that was pretty neat. Or to maybe like make things mobile friendly. But again, to emphasize, this is a preview, and then I wouldn't expect it to load the map for the preview. That's kind of a Leaflet specific thing. But once it's done with the preview, it's going to start building the full application. Some things to call out. While Agent's building, it will make checkpoints. Checkpoints are really important for vibe coding because they're kind of like fallbacks, right? If something breaks, I can always roll back to a checkpoint. Under the hood, this works on Git. You don't have to worry about that too much, but every Agent project by default has Git, so you can go to a new tab and type in Git to see the version control and all of the different commits. If we want to connect this to an external GitHub repository, you can do that as well. But every project has Git. You can go back to these checkpoints at any time in order to, sort of fix things if they break. And that actually ties into my vibe coding philosophy. Again, in the next video, I'll talk more about that, but you should build in such a way where you're trying new things out, you're testing new things, and then rolling them back. If they break, try a different prompt, tweak it a little bit, sort of this iterative philosophy. So now what we can see Agent is doing is actually building out the actual app. So it's fetching some tile stuff from OpenStreetMap. It's going to set the current view. You can kind of like pick through here. And like, I don't understand this code. You don't have to understand the code either. But like what I can see here is like logically, I see the types of characteristics that are being implemented. This is a component called sidebar. And in the sidebar, I just saw some like filters, right, coming by. And so I'm like thinking, okay, like this is how Agent is structuring my app. And if I wanted to learn more about this app, I would open up the files and start looking around saying, okay, like client server, what does that mean? Well, client is a front end, a server is a back end. And inside the client, I would have front end stuff, front end components, an app, etc. Inside the server, I have routes. There's actually an API that's going to power this application. And that's how most applications with Agent are built. They're full stack applications. They have a front end and a back end. Now, at any time, we can see the different files that are being edited here, which is important. And so when I'm thinking about building with AI, I'm really thinking about learning how this project works. I don't know how it works because I'm not writing the code, But once it's working, I can start to reverse engineer that. And that's kind of what I'm talking through here, looking at the files and looking at the folders in this project. So now agent's installing the dependencies. Again, pretty cool. We have all these like languages and dependencies installed. We're actually seeing an error on the run. So you might be thinking, okay, that didn't work. But what we're going to notice is that agent can actually see the error. So cool thing about our agent, if you're not familiar with an agent, it's just like AI that can do stuff for you, basically. It can see the console. It can actually take screenshots of the app. And so it can do a lot of the same debugging steps that you or I would do when we're trying to build something. Hey, why is this thing broken? What are some clues for me to understand why this thing is broken? And how can I fix that? So, often the last step agent takes is saying, let's check if our application is working and request user feedback. So it looks like the map is loading. Let's see what we got. I see a map. I don't see any OpenStreetMap data. Now let's think through this through. Something isn't working here, right? The map loads, the map looks cool, but we're not getting the data. So often what I'll do is I'll go to the console. The console is like the logs for your project. And so like logically debugging, we have dev tools here. You can see the front end console. You can see other elements in the site, the network, right? It's actually making a request to this SF features endpoint. And the request is not working. Is red. That's bad. So what I would copy here is, boom, failed to fetch map features, error cannot read properties of undefined, reading natural. I'm just literally going to paste that to agent. And what I'm doing here is I'm facilitating the process of figuring out what's wrong with my app and then providing something useful to our sort of AI agent here that it can debug that issue and hopefully fix it. So what it looks like is happening is we're calling the OpenStreetMap API somewhere, and we're getting a response that doesn't fit into what agent is expecting. And so if I was like, okay, what's going on? I build these apps a lot, right? It's probably happening in routes, SF features. We're building an overpass query. I have no idea what that means. And we're fetching this overpass data. Something's breaking in here. We're seeing the exact same thing, but agent is making some changes. So it's saying, let's try to understand what might be going on with the response from the overpass API. So now I'm starting to understand, okay, we're using something called overpass to access OpenStreetMap data. I don't know what that is. It's not working. So it looks like agent is adding some kind of fallback. We're getting these errors. Failed to match. Failed, cannot read properties of undefined. Reading natural. Interesting. Let's modify our map overpass to features function to provide more robust error handling. So in our console, we're also seeing the same error calls. A lot of this stuff, right? Like I could let agent continue to try and like fix this on its own, or I could just like leave and come back. I like to kind of follow along sometimes if I'm trying to learn. If I'm in a rush, I'll leave and let it work, and then I'll come back. But the crux of what agent is doing here is it's like trying solutions, observing the output, trying again. That's debugging in some sense. And so my hypothesis here for what's going wrong is that we're making these calls to SF features in our routes, and then something's breaking where we're getting data in an unexpected format. And so it looks like agent just implemented some error logging. My hope would be that this error logging provides more information as to what the problem is. Skipping element without tags. That looks pretty conclusive, right? Like we're getting data now and it's being skipped for some reason. So we get this get request pending. Okay. It actually works. Look at that. I didn't even have to do anything. So now we have, this is cool. We have a map of peaks, of parks, Maritime Plaza, some gardens, little peak. Very cool. Unnamed cave. I'm going unnamed cave later. That's what I got on my plans. So we got it working. We connected all of the pieces. Let's see what we can do here. Do the filters work? Do these things work? Woods. Yes, they do. Islets. parks, gardens. Pretty cool. Yeah, so I dig this styling, but there's some better leaflet styling. Can you use a more minimalist cart style for OpenStreetMap? Cardo Light. Again, I did some research. I know what good some good leaflet maps look like. Hopefully it understands what I was saying there. Cardo Light is a theme for leaflet that gives us like a bit more of a clean interface. So Agent should be able to make that change for us. There you go. That looks pretty cool. Typically, when I want to add more polish or tackle smaller features, I'll switch over to Assistant, and I'll say something like, again, for those unfamiliar, Assistant is our tool for more lightweight edits. We were kind of laying the foundation with our MVP with Agent. Now for Assistant, I'm going to come over and say, like, can you add a dark mode to my app and use Cardo Dark for the map in the dark mode? And Assistant's a little bit snappier. What you'll see is that the responses typically come in a little bit faster here. And again, a little bit more lightweight. Cool thing is that Assistant can do like a lot of the stuff Agent can do. So it can run files, it can make changes, it can make edits, do a lot of really cool stuff, update your app, restart your app, and most importantly, read files for context. So like read the structure of my application. It looked in the client because it knew it needed to be in the front end, and now it's making theme context edits. It's editing a theme provider. It's adding some dark mode styles, and it looks like it's going to add a dark mode map style to update the tile layer. Again, I'm not super sure what that is in the context of our application, but I do know that map tiles have to do with how we show the app. And then it just restarted the app, which is why you saw it flip over to the console. Again, we might have to look into I don't know what all this means, but we might have to look into that. Let's see what we got. That's a little weird. I don't really know. Yeah, so it doesn't look like there's a toggle, number one. Oh, okay. So the toggle theme button works for the map, but then, then it disappears. Okay, so the toggle theme button works for the map, but it disappears when clicked. The theme toggle should be in the side nav, and the theme should be applied to the side nav. I feel like building with AI, it's kind of like you get kind of like a genie in a bottle. You ask it to do something, it may or may not do that thing, which is kind of the fun part about what we're doing here. So we're going to need to update the text here. We're just going to kind of need a little bit more robust edits. Again, the nice thing is that Assistant moves pretty quick. And so like these edits can be kind of a little bit more targeted. But we're noticing on toggle theme is not defined. Again, Agent is taking these actions on your behalf. Assistant is going to take fewer of those actions, which is why, like I'm going to have to do more work in kind of providing context here to build stuff. So use theme hook import. But if you're following along, right, what we did was we built the kind of foundation of our app in Agent. Then we moved over to Assistant for some of these lightweight edits. Now we're working on a dark mode toggle. So we got light mode, dark mode. Now there are 2 toggle theme buttons. Now there are 2 toggle themes. One controls the map, the other controls the side nav. Make them into one in the side nav and update the CSS. Again, I'm being really descriptive here with what I want because it's kind of what you have to do. I do not like this thing up top there. That's kind of lame, but we're getting close, right? So if you're going to Assistant is technically cheaper. It's technically just like more lightweight again. Now I have these lines. It's technically more lightweight, but you can move faster. And sometimes I really like to chat fast and just kind of move fast. You'll notice how fast these edits are being applied. A little bit quicker than Agent. And so, dude, Uh, use. I'm probably not being targeted enough, right? Side nav is not being defined. Well, let's look at our components. Sidebar. Yeah. Use at. You can mention files. Sidebar. We're not using the right components, and so we can direct assistance context. We can say, hey, you should probably read this file, and then it's going to update the reference. You can even see there, it was like assuming this component exists. The component does not exist, but that's okay. We're going to figure it out. And debugging, what we're doing now, largely trial and error. I want to show you all this because you're going to get errors when you're building with AI, right? Like this stuff is going to happen. It's not going to be a walk in the park. And so I don't want to make you think it is a walk in the park. Um, but it's important that now it doesn't toggle the map. So we have to tell AI, okay, now the dark mode toggle in at sidebar does not toggle the map to Cardo dark. It's important for you to see errors. It's important for you to see mistakes because there are a lot of mistakes in AI. And that's just kind of like what we're doing inherently, the state of building with AI, the state of building with agent and assistant. And vibe coding, that's exciting because I think it's going to do what we want it to do, is that there are a lot of errors and it's very trial and error, play with things. But hopefully what you're getting from this video is that I'm showing you my process and that it's all okay, right? It's just they're not mistakes. They're happy little accidents. So if I can be the Bob Ross of vibe coding, that would be fine by me. So then we have our dark mode that we added with assistant. This is certainly pretty good. I'm actually pretty happy with this. You can filter on these different things. Notably, we're not showing some of these, so I think these errors, skipping element, these are just like missing tags. So that would be something to look into. But for this version of the app, I think we're in a really good spot. After all, this is Vibe Coding 101. This video is probably already longer than I wanted it to be. I like this a lot. We have an interactive map of San Francisco outdoor spaces that we pulled in from an open source framework that we did a little bit of research on and figured out how to build. You can see the different landmarks, the different types. And yeah, the amazing thing is that this is running in an environment that's on Replit. It's kind of live already. The cool thing is like, if I scan this, locally, if you're building with another tool, normally you'd be building on localhost and that's only accessible on your machine. The cool thing about Replit is that it's already, you have a development environment that's live in the cloud. And so I can access this on my phone and see what it looks like and click around. Notably, the filters aren't present on my phone, so that might be a follow-up. But we have this development URL. This is ephemeral. It's not deployed or anything. What we're going to do now is deploy the app. So agent Replit, is going to tell me what to deploy it to. I think that looks good. I like SF Park Mapper. It configures the build and run commands for me. Important to mention, if there are any secrets, right? Like, so if you have any like API keys, stuff you want to define that's like sensitive information, you put them in secrets. Agent will build with those on the back end, so they're not exposed to the front end. Important security consideration. And we'll pull those into your deployment for you. Now what I'm going to do is click deploy. Now what Replit's going to do is bundle up this entire environment, this entire thing that we've been building here. And it's just going to make that same version live on the web. So if you go back and you start editing this project, you're not going to change what's already deployed unless you click redeploy, which will be present when we're done with this. Now, typically deployment takes a few minutes, takes a little while to bundle everything up and get it promoted. I'm going to jump back in when deployment is done. We're going to talk about what we built. We're going to talk about next steps and where to go from here. Okay, so we're back. That took about 5 minutes. I can go to this link and I have my park mapper. Kind of next steps here. Pretty cool. Really happy with how this came together. Next steps. The parks load on every refresh, so we might want to add a database. We might want to consider some like data storage. It'd be cool to be able to save parks or maybe highlight your favorite parks. That's something we can kind of explore maybe in a later video. And then, what else? Yeah, storing these in a database, advanced filtering, figuring out what's kind of going on with the console and why we weren't loading certain things. Maybe different icons or some better styling. But yeah, this is coming along. Simple little application. We pulled in some external data. We made some bug fixes. We did some debugging together. Follow-up video is going to be on how I think about vibe coding, skills in vibe coding. And then the next video will be like, we're just going to keep building. We're going to keep making this better, implementing some more cool stuff. But again, I'm out with Replit. This has been Vibe Coding 101, how you can get started building cool stuff on Replit. And I didn't write any code. 10 minutes, we went from idea to deployed park mapping app. So until next time, peace.